So today, we're going to trace a pretty difficult path. It's a journey from the heavy, leaden weight of a soul that's in hiding, all the way to the chaotic, even joyful freedom of someone who has stared right into the void. Look, this is not a simple story about finding the light. It's a descent, it's a shattering, and ultimately, it's a coronation.
And right there, that quote, it sets the entire stage for us. It tells you the transformation isn't always some clean, beautiful thing. Sometimes it's a brutal transaction, right? It's an exchange of all your comfortable illusions for a terrible, sovereign truth. In our journey, it begins with the weight of a mask.
We're starting in a state of paralysis, in this frozen moment that's completely defined by a mask. But this isn't a mask for a party. No, this is a psychological fortress built to keep the entire world, and maybe more importantly, the self, at a safe, cynical distance.
Now, the slide calls this the trickster's mask, but you gotta understand its true purpose. This is not some playful mischief. It's what the source material calls static control. It's a weapon. It's a defense mechanism of sarcasm and mockery that's used to freeze your own personal growth, to stop what's called the spirit of becoming dead in its tracks. It's choosing stagnation, that heavy lead of mortality, over the terrifying freedom of actually changing.
So what's this mask really doing? Well, it's all about defense. It's shielding a fragile ego, using humor like a weapon to avoid the painful work of real transformation. And in the end, it just promotes spiritual decay. It's a symptom of what the Source calls a sickness of the will. And that's really just a profound fear of choosing growth, a refusal to face the total, unfiltered reality of your own soul.
Okay, so you've got this perfectly controlled, frozen world. But what happens when it bumps up against something it just can't contain? Something wild, irrational, and totally absurd? Well, it begins to crack.
The parable of the weaver of glass threads, man, it's the perfect metaphor for this failure. You have this figure of absolute order, the weaver, and she actually thinks she can map the entire chaotic universe with her level and safe logic. She tries to use these tools of pure reason and order to contain the irrational. She's convinced her rigid laws can just paper over the spiritual emptiness in her kingdom, but she is so wrong.
And there you have it. That's the result. Her system, her beautiful, fragile logic, it just shatters against the force of pure, absurd life. The laughter of chaos simply dissolves her authority. It just goes to show that any attempt to completely dominate the irrational is like a contract written in disappearing ink. The rigid world cannot hold. So, if the trickster's mask is a defense, and the weaver's logic is just a cage, what in the world is strong enough to break them both? The answer isn't more control. It's an agent of pure destruction.
And this is the crucial distinction. You have the shadow trickster, with his defensive sneer. He's passive. He hides. But then you have the sapphire jester. He embodies what's called kinetic nihilism. Now, that's not the passive belief that nothing matters. Oh no. It is the active destruction of false values. He is a whirlwind, and he's not meant to protect anything. He's meant to clear the ground, to smash everything so that something authentic can finally be built in its place.
And that right there is his whole job. He is the catalyst who shows up to tear down unearned majesty, hollow traditions, all that empty authority. His laughter that confirms the smashing, it's not cruelty just for the sake of it. It's the essential trial that you have to endure before any genuine ascent is even possible. He creates a void so that you can fill it with your own meaning.
But here's the thing. To build anything new, you first have to look at what's rotting in the basement. The destruction has to turn inward. And so now, we descend into the self to confront the most profound and buried shame imaginable.
The source material gives us this figure called the ugliest man, and he's the embodiment of this ultimate shame, and he's a murderer. Now, from a psychological perspective, his motive isn't about power or rebellion. It's rooted in a deeply personal and just devastating self-loathing.
So, the first part of his motive, he murdered God to escape an all-knowing witness. Can you imagine feeling so exposed, so seen in your every single flaw, that the mere presence of an observer becomes an unbearable intrusion?
And you know what's even worse than being seen? Being pitied. It was this constant, pitying gaze that he couldn't stand. Psychologically, this isn't just someone watching you, it's a mirror, reflecting your own toxic shame right back at you, making it absolutely impossible to hide from how worthless you think you are. So this act of murder, it becomes an act of what's called terminal honesty. It's the confession of that part of the self that would rather extinguish the divine, extinguish the ultimate source of light and meaning, than endure the shame of being seen by it.
Okay, so you've confronted this ugliest man inside you, and that's the trigger. The foundation is gone. The Jester has smashed the outer walls, and now the inner castle collapses. This is the moment of total, chaotic, and liberating collapse.
And what brings the walls down? Something called the logic of zero. It's this brutal, honest currency that basically says all our striving, our achievements, our values, in the grand cosmic scheme, they all add up to nothing. It's a terrifying thought for sure, but it's also what finally forces the spirit out of its stagnation.
And that's the climax. Your whole world, your ego, your mask, your little kingdom of rigid control, it all comes crashing down. And it's not some grand tragedy. It's a cosmic punchline. The universe itself is laughing along with the Jester at the sheer absurdity of our own self-importance.
The source calls this moment a Dionysian rupture, a nod to the Greek god of chaos and ecstasy. It's a complete, messy, and liberating dissolution of the old rigid self. It's the only force chaotic enough to shatter the old structures and transform their poison into fuel. But out of all that wreckage, something new starts to emerge. And it's not a slow, painful recovery. No, this is a dance, a joyful, chaotic, and profoundly affirmative state of being, born from total annihilation.
The shadow trickster is gone, and in his place, the light Jester. He has faced the logic of zero, he has integrated his deepest shadow, even the god murderer inside, and now he can actually smile at the void. Humor isn't a shield anymore, it's an agent of growth. This is what the source calls the gay science, which is this joyful wisdom and enthusiastic yes to life in its totality, with all its pain and all its beauty.
And this just brilliantly illustrates the final transformation. It's the act of grave dancing on the corpse of your old self, on your own leaden gravity. It is the ultimate act of turning the cruel mockery of the past into a powerful, joyful yes to everything. It is achieving amor fati, the love of your fate.
So this whole journey from the trickster to the Jester, it shows us that real growth requires not just learning, but unlearning, not just building, but demolition, which really just brings us to the one fundamental question. The price of this wisdom is the smashing of your world. Is it a price you're willing to pay?